Growing up in an African home, one of the things I wish I had seen more often was unfiltered communication. How the elderly and the young combine their unique levels of knowledge and experiences to tackle complex topics such as weight stigma, postpartum depression, parental favoritism, suicide, sterility, interethnic marriages, and many more. This is what Heart to Heart is all about. Beyond giving an ear to high-profile men and women during one-on-one interviews, its purpose is to inspire listeners from all walks of life with stories of transparency from everyday people who overcame their world by looking within. Welcome to Heart with Divine Karen.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Heart to Heart with Divine Karen. As you know, this month of June, we are focusing on fathers. But of course, on my right, we have a father and his name is Given. I know him as Given Illustrative, but he will introduce himself, obviously. And then we've got Harold, who is not a father yet. Okay? So let's not spoil it for you, but he is here for a purpose. And we are focusing on the topic raising kings. Right, and I'm gonna start with Given actually, because you're a dad.
Yes.
How does it feel to be a dad in the 21st century?
You know, I think the question of how does something feel, more often than not, right? Things that you experience in life tend to just feel the same. Your feelings are the same. The feelings would change at the beginning, but for most of the part, I still feel like me, right? I still feel like I've got two legs. Two arms and all of that. So I suppose I can talk about how not necessarily just started at the point of how it feels to be a father, but how does it feel building up towards?
Okay.
Because that's where you experience a lot of emotions, because then you're thinking about my life is about to change. Will I get sleep? Am I saying goodbye to it?
Yeah.
My expenses are about to change, and etc. So I would say it's a bit of a complicated question, because the emotions go from that phase. Then you have the time when your child is born, and that's a completely different emotion. It's scary. You're worried more about your woman, if she's going to be fine. You see her pass out and you're like, oh my goodness,
Shoot, give us something.
Yeah, so it really is a bit of a mixed bag there.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very scary process. Building up, it's more of a, like when an exam is coming and you feel like I'm about to write the worst exam ever. That's more what it feels like.
Okay.
But it goes up and down. And then in the moment of giving birth, it's a very scary time. While at the same time having it's like a calm that comes after the storm and not necessarily before. So when the child is here, then you just feel this, I'm a father. Me who was breaking my mother's glasses. Not so logical.
And I think that now brings me to Harold. Like, Harold, how does it feel to sometimes go to the mall and see a young man your age, a dad? Like, does it put pressure on you just as much as, how women can be, like, especially at my age?
Yes.
Like, oh, she's my age and she's married and she has a first child. Like, oh, I want that as well. Is it the same feeling for guys, or is it like,
I think it's both inspiring and scary. It's inspiring because, as a man, you like get to a point where you can have your child, you can spend your time with the child, grow with your child.
Yeah.
It's scary because you don't know the reality of raising a kid. So when you see another man with a child, as to me personally, I'm inspired to have my own kid, because you get to see that harmony between the father and the kid. You get to see the love, you get to see that thing that they have going on there. And left home, oh, that's nice, look at them in the matching outfit, smiling, all that stuff. But then the reality of actually growing up the kid is a scary part, especially as a man, when you have to start into something like it's new, basically. As much as you're seeing your father doing it to you, but then when your time comes, you don't know if your kid is you or the opposite of you. So that element alone is scary, but being a father at home is something that I aspire to be.
That's amazing. And I think now my question will be directed to the both of you. I'm glad you mentioned this whole thing of generational upbringing, based on how you were raised, do you think that the environment within which a man or a young boy finds himself plays a role in how he will raise his child someday, or whether or not he wants to aspire to become a father?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. That definitely does play a role, but I think it you know how there is an assumption that if you're raised within a household with certain siblings, and then all of you were given the same kind of parenting, the older you get, it is assumed that you would all turn out relatively the same, right? You both desire success. I say both, but all of you will desire to, be successful.
Right.
If one is successful, all of you will desire to be parents because you were raised by parents. I think that's what, in answering your question, I don't want to take for granted the fact that formula doesn't always work.
Okay.
If you're raised by a single parent, it doesn't mean you're going to automatically not want to be a parent because you saw how hard it was for your parent. So I'll give a bit of context for me, for example. I was raised by a single mother, right? My father was in the picture, but he wasn't really present. So most of my experience of men being present in my life happened at church. And that was also a bit of a stone throw away because they weren't there for moments that mattered to me. Exactly. I mean, my brother is probably the closest real father figure I have. And even he was busy growing up while I was growing up, So I had to learn a lot, pick a lot. I quite literally learned the concept of fatherhood from here and there and there and there and there and there. And then I pieced those together, right? So I would say under the circumstances that I was raised, I would say that I turned out in a way that one would not expect. You understand what I mean? Because I watched my mother struggle raising 4 kids. I watched my mother struggle financially. I also got to understand the importance of. There's an extent to which, depending on your mindset, some who have distant fathers crave the father attention. Others go the other extreme where they like, I don't want at all. I would say I was more mid. But at the same time, I did not lose reverence for the figure, the father figure. Yeah, I think because of my pursuit of wanting to learn what it means to be a father, that's where I learned.
Okay, okay, I see. And what about you, Harold?
Yeah, I've always believed in that concept, the moral to say that 2 kids had a drunk father. One grew up to be better than the father, and the other grew up to also be a drunkard. Now, with me, with both my parents in my life, I've always had that in mind. So as much as they grew up in a certain way, what they would believe is right, growing up as well, I have learned to also pretty much examine the way my parents raised me, to be like, is this the way I also want to raise my kids? So pretty much with me, I learned what to then want not to do for my parents based on how they raised me. And with my life personally, growing up, I had a switch with my dad. At my early ages, between I think maybe till age of 13, my dad was very aggressive, very, very violent to me. Like he used to hit me over a little thing, like I can break a glass and my dad would throw me over to the other side of the room. Right? So at the age of 13, I think my dad realized that that's not how to avoid a kid, and he apologized to me. It was the first time my dad apologized to me. And then from there, his entire way of treating me changed. And I think that also for me was the moment in which I learned, okay, cool. So if he acknowledges that that's not how I'm going to raise a kid, then that also tells me that as me as an individual, I should be able to pick up as well that, okay, no, my dad has maybe missed it here. Maybe he thinks it's right, but me as an individual growing up, I can tell that in maybe 2-3 years time from now, I'm not penned out in this way. So I've just learned to examine how you are raised. So I don't think there's a pattern or a formula to raise your kids. It's not like you can take what your dad told you and then pass on to the next kid and happen to the next kid. But it's understanding how your kid is. So if for example, I get a kid now and then he will have to be a genius, I'm not going to treat him the way my dad raised me. It has to be a different treatment for him. And that would come to what he says, I don't think you can grow all the kids the same way.
Yeah.
Every kid would have his own particular way of growing up based on skill sets. there's wellness capabilities. You find that your child is an entrepreneur, you want to invest that in him as soon as possible. You find that this one is a musician. So yeah, it all comes out. Well, this is what I've learned from this growing up. What kind of I'm a child, and as a father, it's up to you to adapt on how you raise your kid from it.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned your brother and how he was sort of an inspiration for you. Who outside of the household would you say you looked up to that perhaps was an image of fatherhood that you wanted, whether it's social media or anybody that you came across or anywhere else? And what do you think is the danger of being raised by social media, basically, as a man?
Okay. So I wasn't raised by social media.
Thank goodness.
I have to first state that I wasn't raised by social media. I was to a large extent raised by community.
Okay.
Which included my mother. It included the people that were around our neighborhood that we prayed with, where we went and played when we were younger. A lot of them involving women. And then you had the men, particularly the men that I then got to meet at church. I remember when I was back home attending church, there were certain men that I looked up to and how they worshipped, how they praised, how they dressed, how they tucked in their shirts. Christian men. How they tucked in their shirts. And I am not exaggerating when I say I subconsciously modeled myself after them. And it's there's a lot of bittersweetness because for the most part, I saw these men at church and that was who they were to me. My pastor being one of them. He played a very huge role, particularly when I was a younger man. He played a very huge role. He'd have conversations with me. He'd tell me that I'm talented. He'd tell me that I see you doing this and that played a very huge role. And then there were other men. I remember one of the lessons that I always mention that I learned. We were having a men's, not a conference, but a men's evening.
Right.
And he was talking about the importance of the first day you open a door for your woman, you've become a slave to that practice. You now have to do it for the rest of the relationship. And he just sold an idea to me.
Yeah.
And I held on to it.
Yeah.
That's all that I don't know how this guy treats his wife.
Yeah.
I don't know how he treats his kids.
Yeah.
But then that's why I was getting to the point of these men. I saw them at face value. What they sold to me at church, I believed. What they did when they got home, how they treated
Who knows?
Who knows? But I'm just saying it worked on me.
Yeah.
So it definitely did had a lot of influence on me. But coming into your question about social media, I feel
like, do you even get inspired by men on social media? I mean, I don't know. I have a brain of my own.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When I see a woman conduct herself in a particular manner on social media, she's got it together. She has a husband, her kids. She's raising her kids well from what we see on her posts.
Yes.
I aspire to be like that in a certain way. Perhaps not 100%, but you ask yourself a lot of questions.
Yes.
Is it the same thing that happens in your mind, or it's completely different?
So yes, definitely that does happen with me. So what I wanted to actually get into is the fact that social media is more of it has an ocean of content. And in order for you to get the right influence from it, you really have to go look for it. And you have to filter out a lot of things. And unfortunately, in the times of short content like Reels, and with TikTok as well and YouTube Shorts, I've realized, and then this used to happen to me a lot when I go on to TikTok or to Twitter, like you will be influenced by something so quickly that you don't even have the time to say, no, I actually don't want to be influenced by this. When videos are going viral, it'll impact you. And then when you get to your friends, you'll find that they're talking about that. Then it gets reinforced. That little short video clip. But I think which is a more concerning thing for me. People don't understand that social media is a person expressing themselves at a point in time, right? Today, I might be if you had listened to Given 7 years ago. And that's who I was on social media.
Yeah.
It's a completely different Given than who I am now. So a lot of times people get sold these momentary versions of people and they think that's who they are. There's growth processes that happen in the background that you're not aware of. And there's maturing that happens in the background that sometimes you're not aware of, which is my issue with this idea of cancel culture, right? Because you'll find a 14-year-old makes a statement and then for 5-7 years later, everyone goes back to that tweet and brings it back to haunt them.
Yeah.
But it was a point in my life. How many times have I said things off of social media?
Right.
And I think the influence of fatherhood and of motherhood as well, and so it should be, I think social media should always be taken with a grain of like huge salt. And you honest, in order for you to learn how to filter, you have to have been influenced by something good elsewhere.
Yeah.
Then you can now discern that this is good, this is bad.
Yeah. Harold, coming to you, like, what is it like being exposed to such an ocean of information online and everything? Do they change your perception about what the future holds as a father?
Well, I agree with what I said. I'm just going to please off. This you just said as well now about filtering. And look, I think when it comes to approaching social media, I must speak for me. I posted the fact that I have a fundamental base of who I am as an individual, right? So not everything that's expected on social media, I understand that it's for me.
Yeah.
So even coming in up as an upcoming dad, I have to be very, forward.
Like,
Careful of what I push.
Yeah.
Very careful about what I push. Like I said, that is, I can just turn out and just be someone's entire livelihood or someone's space of life. Like my only like is this and this and call it this and club back.
Yeah.
And then later down the line, it's not even it, or it just turned out to be the wrong advice or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of just first in knowing who you are as an individual. So whatever you consume, feeds onto who you are already as a person.
Right.
So when I go on social media, it's more to elevate myself and build myself. I don't follow mainstream stuff. Personally, I'm on social. I don't follow mainstream. I don't follow the mainstream artists. I follow like your businessman, your mental health man. One of the most hated person right now is End of Tape, but I should listen to it. I listen to End of Tape. I listen to the military that I follow, isn't it? The military water bogus, or I think it has something. Yeah. But I follow a lot of mindset people, empowerment, men, be men, masculine. As a
Okay, that's really
yes,
interesting.
not toxic.
Okay.
No. Back in the streets. That's
Not toxic masculinity.
Yes.
We're not getting into that. All right, so we have less than 5 minutes left, but this is my last question to the both of you. How do you feel about, and this is mostly a comment that you hear a lot from African women, that they say that African men are not present in the lives of their kids or just in general. Like they don't have a long-term type of mindset. Like they want short, whether it's hookup wise or whether it's like in their own career, they want fast and quick and okay, as soon as I'm done here, I'm out.
Yeah.
And like, how do you feel about such statements, and is it true that all African men are just not serious and they're not serious fathers?
Definitely not all. I think all is an overstatement. But I would definitely agree with the majority. However, this is something. All right, so I'm gonna try and just summarize it. You know how our parents, baby boomers, those who gave birth to millennials, they are parents that don't say I love you. They don't say I'm sorry, and they punish you on the spot, right? They are very hard, right? They come from, like, you have to ask yourself, why do all of us, including Asian parents, why do all of us have that in common when it comes to our parents? There's something our parents went through that made them that way. And then you look at millennials as when we become parents. We're the ones to be soft. We're the ones to love our children. I am saying that to build up to this point. I truly believe that African men, something hardened them. And that's often not studied enough.
Okay.
That's often not spoken about enough. I'm not saying that we're these victims that couldn't take control and, tell the difference between right and wrong. We're not children, and we should definitely be held accountable. However, we should consider the fact that there is a time that African men come from. And I'm also hopeful because of the transition that I'm seeing now in parents, the modern parents, how they will tell you, I come from a very hard background. I was reading something on social media of someone saying that their parents, when she went to sleep at night, her parents used to talk about how bad she is with the door open while she's in her bedroom. And she's made it a point to leave her door open and say how good her daughter is. So that's what new parents are becoming. And another thing is when I noticed when we were going to see the gynae, while my partner was pregnant, what I noticed was that there were a lot of men present there. So I'm hopeful that something is changing. Definitely hopeful.
Well, yes.
I agree with 100%. I think over time men have changed. And to be precise, African men, we have changed over time. Our parents back then, my parents inclusive, were very hard. And like I say, it's basically what they went through in life for them to treat the kids the way they treat the kids. But the fathers of today, including myself, I've been more soft on my kids because of what I went through as well. I watched my dad evolve as he grew up from being hard to being soft.
Yeah.
So now for me, here onwards, I want to be soft on my kid because honestly, the transition has happened in my life. I mean, with the new generation, transition has happened. We've understood life differently. We've realized that everything has to be enforced, not everything has to be physical, not everything has to be yelled at. You can actually sit your kid down and speak to him and he will understand you. So yeah, I agree with you. The transition has taken place, and parents from here onwards, it's another different thing. We're going to be more present in our kids' lives, considering the future and how things have developed in life.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I feel with this.
I think I'll end off by saying that regardless of what people say, we can't put the blame on a collective because of what we've been exposed to, like in our confined space, right? And I think it's really important for us to explore on an individual level what we're talking about and what we're discussing. They are high-value men in Africa, in the world, and just because a particular person has not been exposed to it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So yes, I'm also very, very much hopeful, and I do believe that we are the generation, or it's high time for us to now clear a smoother path than the ones that our parents went through and the ones that perhaps we have even been through when we were raised. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time, and stay tuned to Heart to Heart. Thank you for watching us today. Bye-bye.